Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm speaking today to Shelley Grodner Seidenstein, who's executive director of the nonprofit organization Kids Who Care Incorporated. That began in 1996. Well, she also offers mentoring and enrichment programs in shelters, transitional homes for children, and self-empowering workshops for women, especially concentrating on those who are survivors of domestic violence. Shelley is also the executive producer of the powerful documentary film Darfur, Too Dark, Too Far, which exposes the root causes of genocide as being slavery, racism, and oppression in the name of religion. That went on to win a number of awards. In 2012, Shelley was the executive producer and co-writer of the award-winning documentary film The Presumption of Guilt, Race, Class, and Crime in America. Today, she's working on a film, or actually has finished a film, which is a project of Shelley's as the executive producer co-writer, and is a Telly Award-winning compelling documentary film, Reflections of a Blessed Soul, a tribute to Dr. Maya Angelou. I want to welcome Shelley to the Susan Brender Show.
Thank you, Susan. I sat back and listened for a moment, and I went, wow, that's a lot of years, a lot of working.
Well, you worked hard, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And also, what you're producing is quite incredible.
It's extraordinary, actually, and it's not just about being in Maya Angelou's home, interviewing her with our phenomenal director and co-writer and producer with me, Farid. It really was a very profound experience because for me, I go back to 1970 when I first learned about Maya Angelou. And so if we have a moment, I would just love to share this with you.
Surely. Tell us about it.
Okay, I will. I had heard about the book that had just recently been published called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and I was really eager to read it, and I did, and I was in my early 20s, and I could not believe the courage that this woman possessed to be able to recount and honestly deliver what I thought was, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, a very riveting and painful story, her story. And it encompassed everything from strength and truthfulness and hope and faith. And we have to remember it was the 60s, the civil rights era, and it was a horrific time for black people in this country. And when I put the book down, I was ripped. I literally cried through passages, and I followed Maya from that time on in any and every way that I could. And so fast forward, when we had the opportunity, and it wasn't easy getting the interview. We really put a lot of time and effort into it. And Hafiz, as I mentioned, the director and my film partner, he had even tried years before for one of his films to have an interview. And so when we were granted the interview in July of 2011, it was truly a dream for me that came true, that I personally was going to be at Maya's home in Winston-Salem interviewing. Well, Hafiz actually did the interviewing, but I was going to be there behind camera and working everything up to that time, whether it was the scripting and all of the technical things that were involved. And I was really nervous. As a matter of fact, for days before, I worried about lighting, the room we were going to be in. I had all this information, but none of us really knew how it was going to pan out. And when we entered her home, and we were setting up, and she actually called, "Mrs. Seidenstein, may I see you?" And now there's only one voice that could be Maya's voice. We all know that deep, throaty voice. It's just fantastic. And Susan and I walked into that kitchen with knees literally shake, because I almost felt that I was literally back then in my 20s for the first time reading her book and following, her years later. But it felt that, could this be true? And I looked at her, and she looked at me, and I have to say that I have never felt more welcomed by just a body language. That's before amazing. Words were even spoken.
Yeah, and what was it about Maya that gives her or gave her the sense of such, let's call it humanitarianism, and the fact that she was an activist? Where did that all come from?
I think it comes from, number one, being so aware, and with that awareness and being so able, so wise to take in so much at a very young time in her life, to also be able to express it in not just written language, but through all of the, for me, attributes that she held. It's one thing, she always said that without courage, none of the other virtues could really be enough. You need to have courage. And she did. And she truly is and will always be our teacher. You asked, it's a very, that question is a really excellent question. And I think that as she learned, she was so hungry to take everything and everybody in that she really did not separate experiences, people, places. She brought, she says, I always bring everyone on the stage with me. Anyone who's ever patted my back, who wrote a book I read and loved, I take everyone up with me, which means that she always became a part of wherever and whatever was going on around her.
What about the kids today? Do they know Maya Angelou?
I would love to have said, absolutely, of course, because it's in the curriculum. The kids learn about Maya from a very early age. But it's not true. And the reality is that one of the things that we feel very blessed about, having had this interview with Maya and all that she has shared to each and every one of us, it is all about our children. That we keep not only her material, her books, her films, her poetry alive in all of us, especially our children. This film is really a beautiful way to have our young people see, number one, who she is physically.
Yes, and she was very good friends with Oprah Winfrey, and the fact is she must have been extraordinarily special if Oprah Winfrey developed that very close relationship with her.
I would say that Oprah would be best to answer this, but my observation and my listening, to Maya and, of course, Oprah as well, is that Maya was like a mother to Oprah and really loved her. Maya loved her very much. As a matter of fact, in her home, when she just made us literally go, to the library and look at the books and photos and visit the sculpture garden, which was absolutely magnificent, and they were sculptures and gifts from people all over the world. And everything had an impact, had a meaning, an intention, a story. And when we went downstairs to her library, there's a beautiful photo of she and Oprah. And if you didn't know, and you were seeing this picture for the first time and didn't know Maya and didn't know Oprah, you would say it was mother and daughter.
That's really quite beautiful.
It was really beautiful. It was beautiful.
Yes. But now let's turn to you a little bit. You are a documentary filmmaker. Mm-hmm. You certainly write a great deal, and you've been involved in so many projects. tell our audience a little bit about you.
I would tell you that from an early age, I always loved writing and telling stories. And, we can talk about it from an adult perspective that there was so much transference going on in my own life that it was so beautiful and easy to do it through other characters when you write the story. It really wasn't about me, but in fact it really was a lot about me. For instance, I can go back and remember when my brother was born. I was 4.5 years old. And we lived in a home. I come from Westchester. Yonkers is where I was living, New York. And there was an attic and a second unfinished room up this for me at 4.5 years old that seemed like a gigantic staircase that went to the top. And on the left was the attic for storage and whatnot. And on the right was this room that was going to be redone for Shelley. That was me when brother was born. That's Bruce. And I wasn't sure how I really was feeling about that because there was some kind of separation anxiety that existed because Mom and Dad would be downstairs and my brother Bruce was going to be, downstairs. I didn't know, at the time name or whatever, but it was going to be my brother downstairs and I was going to be upstairs. And while the building was going on, it wasn't a whole lot of work, but while it was happening, I was actually invited to be part of it. There wasn't a lot of work. It was just really basically, the wall, the painting, a few things here and there. And by the time this little room, which wasn't so little, was finished, it really was an oasis, Susan. It really was an escape. And what I found is that once I set up my little table with my little chairs and all my stuffed animals and my tea set and my books around me, this is 4.5 years old. I grew into this. But I ended up having my little fantasy world up those many stairs to my little, and that is really the beginning of my recollection of really being in that place of really wanting to share stories. And when I was able to write and I created things, I was always writing short stories, always creating, but I didn't have the direction. It wasn't like my folks said, well, you really have a gift, or you really should be doing this. This would be really great. I was kind of, doing my own thing, and I went through high school, and went through college, and became an educated teacher, and then went on for a master's in special education and worked with kids that were challenged. I even felt throughout my whole entire growing up and then into a professional life that for me to reach my kids, my children, was through the creative process. We all learn differently, but I know it's really hard for so many of us to always have traditional way of learning. Some people, and we were just having this conversation earlier, some people like to learn by reading. Some people like to learn by someone sitting and doing tutorials. Some people like to learn by just playing around hands-on. But the truth of the matter is, any material that is going to have to be taken in and a child be responsible for learning, there's nothing more exciting, more beautiful, more penetrating than through a creative way.
Those are words of inspiration, Shelley. I'm very interested in some other things that you've been involved in. Mm-hmm. And, for example, you've worked at a place called the Whole Theater Company with Olivia DeCox and Arnold Middleman. I mean, what was that all about?
Well, you have been really doing due diligence here. That is true. I volunteered to the Whole Theater. Was a New Jersey-based theater, stage theater, that was fabulous and extremely a wonderful venue to bringing good theater to suburbia, because that's really where this is set up. It's in Montclair. Montclair, New Jersey is actually a stop away from Manhattan, so you've had a lot of artists. It's a very diversified town, city. And so Olympia and her husband, Louis Orich, they were actually citizens of Montclair. They resided here. And Anna Middleman was in a nearby neighborhood. And their passion was theater, of course, and they wanted to open this up. And they started at a little church, and they ended up building a beautiful theater. And I went there one day, loving the arts and whatnot, and I had just moved to New Jersey, and I wasn't at the time working, and I had just started up a pediatric enrichment program for the pediatric department at East Orange General Hospital for children that were there. And at the same time, I went over to the whole theater, and I just said I would love to volunteer. And they said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I think I could do anything except be on stage."
Why not?
Because I had horrible stage fright. And if it weren't for Olympia, who made me go on stage, I don't think I would ever have been on stage, per se. And it was a fabulous experience. What I did is I worked with actually setting up for all the shows and working with the actors and making sure everything was organized and they had everything. And what she wanted me to do is on Sundays get up on the stage and people who were subscribers or who were not, whoever was in the audience, to pitch about supporting the whole theater. Well, I just have to say one thing. The first time I did it, my lip literally got stuck. It protruded on the left side only. It was my speech defect. I don't think anybody knew. And I perspire. I never perspire, Susan, and I was drenched. And when I got off stage, I went to Olympia and I said, "I don't think I could ever do this again." And she said, "Oh, yes, you can." Oh. And "Oh, yes, you will."
Did you?
And so blessings to her, because she really, really helped me through the stage fright. And I ended up at taking an incredible course at the New School with a wonderful actress therapist who was in a film called Unmarried Woman.
Oh, I know it well.
She played the therapist because she was, and I took her course on, and also took a course on stage fright. And I have to tell you, when I finished those two courses, not that I could be an actress, although I would love to be, I would rather write the parts.
Well, speaking of writing, that's clear to me. I mean, I too wanted so much to be an actor, and
really,
oh, it's true. And I used to sit in on all these different acting schools in New York, and it was such a joy to watch them. It was incredible to listen to some of the people who were there, how they really understood a character. It was a wonderful experience. But let me change gears here and say to you that you were the co-author of Power Tools for Women, and you self-published it?
We did. A really dear friend and actually a wonderful writer. I did it with her. It was an idea that Ellen had, and we were both. I was working in the field, working with women, empowering workshops, survivors of domestic violence, women in shelter who really couldn't even think about tomorrow. They could barely get through today, and in some shelters with their children. And we talked about this so much and came up with this book, which is wonderful. And it's all about ritual. It's all about things to be able to do, the tools to collect, to be able to bring that self-love into one's being through really opening up doors to see what we need to be whole. And it's really a wonderful book. It probably could be gotten on Amazon.com. I haven't really checked it recently, but it's out. It could be out there. But we used it. We really didn't get it published in terms of putting it out and doing it, which we really could and should. But we used it as our tools for all the workshops that we ran, and we've run a number of workshops over the years. And we were invited to Canyon Ranch, which is a very exclusive spa wellness center. Actually, there are a few in Arizona and Florida. and up in Massachusetts, and we did a weekend workshop for the women. And these women are not women from shelters, and they are very fortunate that they could afford to be at such a fantastic and a really phenomenal healing center. And so, and the reason I'm bringing the contrast up is that we all need to be empowered, and we all struggle. It's all very individual, and we are, I'm always hoping that we see our blessings and are grateful for the things that we do have and the things that we can perhaps manifest. And so it was really something to have women who someone would say, oh my goodness, what problems could they possibly have, but who can come into the workshop and really, really be very moved and open up some areas in their lives that they hadn't really felt they had the tools to do so.
I want to take a short break now. Our guest today is Shelley Grodner Seidenstein. She's an author and a documentary maker, and I'm sure she has lots of other things that she does as well. But let's take a short break, and we'll be back in a moment.
Cool off with the delicious treat at FYI Frozen Yogurt and Ice Cream Shop in beautiful Delray Beach, Florida. FYI offers more than 20 flavors of ice cream, frozen yogurt, Italian gelato, sorbet, protein shakes, and more. FYI also caters birthday parties or any special occasion. Enjoy these wonderful treats in our cool, breezy, kid-friendly cafe. That looks good. Can Mommy have a taste?
They're mine.
Oh well. You can receive a free small cone of frozen yogurt or ice cream if you say the magic words, Susan sent you. Don't forget to pick up a coupon for $1 off your next purchase. They're located at 9 Northeast 2nd Avenue in Pineapple Grove, Delray Beach, Florida. They're open 7 days a week. For store hours or more information, call 561-450-7402. This commercial brought to you by FYI Frozen Yogurt and Ice Cream Shop and the Susan Brender Show. See you there.
Now we're back with Shelley Grodner Seidenstein. And Shelley, you were the executive producer of the award-winning documentary film, The Presumption of Guilt, Race, Class, and Crime in America. I want our audience to know more about that, too.
Yes. Hafiz and I actually know and have been with Charles Ochiltree, Professor Charles Ochiltree of Harvard Law School, and he had written a book, The Presumption of, actually it was The Arrest of Henry Louis Gates, Jr. It's, Presumption of Guilt, The Arrest of Henry Louis Gates, Jr., Race, Class, and Crime in America. And we knew Charles and had conversations and had read the book. And Hafiz and I were talking about, this really should be a documentary film, expanded. Professor Ochiltree had used 100 black men under the topic of racial profiling, and they were, all professionals, and they were giving their stories and whatnot, and we really felt that we wanted to expand and include women into the story, and we did some, embellishment, and a lot of research went into this, and we really came up with this documentary, which is also extremely powerful, painful to watch, truth be it as it is, and we were able to really journey through what it's like to be black in America, and that particular film is really a film that students, adults, we should all see it, share it, talk about it. These are the conversations that we need to have. And very, very important that documentaries like The Presumption of Guilt be shown everywhere, libraries, schools. It should be out there. And it has an amazing array of people that are involved in terms of talking heads that have created lots of information. They have imparted much wisdom and thought-provoking things for us to look at. Maya Angelou is in it. We have Anita Hill, Michelle Alexander, she's an attorney and author of The New Jim Crow, Alan Dershowitz, Tim Wise, Professor Ogletree. It's just filled with incredible human beings who are doing a lot of work in trying to raise the consciousness when it comes to race and racism in this country.
That's quite a list of guests and people who you've actually given an opportunity to share their wisdom.
Yes.
But Shelley, you've been appointed ambassador for peace by the United Federation for Peace, and you were honored by the women in the movement. So tell our audience about that.
I want to say this, that I have many. We all, at least I'm hoping that we can in some way do something that has an intention to help another person, as small as it may seem to the individual or others. It's truly where it begins. And it is really about, it's lovely to be recognized and to have these awards and nominations. There are so many of us doing so much that I always come from the perspective of really recognizing each day of my life what somebody or some people have done or do, whether I'm walking into even into the supermarket, and you see somebody at the checkout counter who says hello, how are you? Makes you feel good, right?
Oh, sure.
To be recognized. And that's something that so many of us don't do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really part of the communication of one human to another. So I always ask, and I put out there to anyone that I'm in contact with, in a humble way, is to even smile at another person, to let them know that there really is a heart, that there really is someone caring. It's such a great feeling. You know when you walk up to someone or you're talking to someone who has a body language that is really very repelling, and it feels cold and feels unwelcoming, versus what I first expressed when I walked into the kitchen to see Maya Angelou, and she just looked at me and there was a big smile and said, "Come here, come in." I felt really good. I felt also safe.
Mm-hmm. I sure wish I had that opportunity, but I just would like the audience to know how they get in touch with you and where they can see your film.
To get in touch, you can right now, I'm going to give you 2 ways. There is a website that is just being put up, which is www.foremost, FOREMOST productions.com, and that is the website that is really right now in progress. But you can get information there. I'm going to give you one more website. And this is a website which is more of our educational website from the nonprofit No Cane Inc., and that is www.nocane.com, as in crutch, no cane. And that has a lot of information. And there are trailers there as well. If there's any interest in seeing any of the films, they are not for sale at this time. They can be definitely screened. Programs can be custom tailored for the individuals, whether it be community centers, religious centers, schools. We go all over. The programs are sensational, and you can certainly contact us there. And thank you for, putting that out there, Susan. We want to get these films out, and we really need the public to help us do that. We're trying to also raise our funds to help pay for the deferred payments, but the cost of the production of these films and the post-productions. And Maya's film, especially now, Reflections of a Blessed Soul, which is just beautiful. I just wanted to interject one thing, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, you started the intro with the nonprofit organization Kids Who Care,
yes,
Inc., which is a nonprofit organization that was really begun 19 years ago. And I have to say that, I am executive director, and only because my daughter in 1996, when she was 12 years old, Alexandra Seidenstein, started this foundation on her own because she wanted to do something for community. It was based on a 7th grade project that the teacher just simply said, find something that took place during the Renaissance that really is still existing now, and through her diligence found out that community service did exist then, and she began Kids Who Care and worked really hard for the years from 12 until 17 and a half when she graduated high school and went off to college. We didn't have the heart to disband it, so my husband and I picked up where she left off while she was doing her work and getting her education, and we've had it going ever since. So I really want to say that the gratitude goes to Allie. Thank you, Allie.
Yes.
For really having the heart and the mind to build such a beautiful program.
Well, that's quite something that you have a daughter who is so powerful and so incredible in what she does. But I always like to give my guest the last word. So what do you have to say, Shelley?
I actually would love to quote something. And I want to first say thank you so much for this opportunity, Susan. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and you're a great interviewer, and you make it very easy. So thank you for that. I also wanted to end, if I may, with a quote from Maya Angelou that I think is really important.
Go ahead.
She said, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
That's really wonderful. Well, my guest today has been Shelley Grodner Seidenstein, and she's given you an opportunity to get in touch with her and to help her raise monies for this wonderful film. So I want to thank you, Shelley, for being on the Susan Brender Show. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much, and all the best, and the best to the audience as well. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show.